Well, the good Lord sent me out on a trip today from out in Independence over here to one of the famous Cracker Barrel stores to get a little special gift for a lady whose husband just passed away Friday. And June said, pick her up a little wind chime. So I came over here and wound up getting 4 of them, 1 for her and 3 for my wife. And a meal to take home, and this is the manager here. Now, what's your name, sir?
My name's Chris Parton.
Chris Parton, and you're open here for to-go orders, right?
Uh-huh.
And food's still as good at Cracker Barrel as it ever was.
Absolutely.
So praise the Lord and pass the ammunition of godly principles, prayers, heart and soul, and everything else.
Amen.
Amen. God bless you and have a great day.
You too.
Travels with the Stephensons here. And your all's phone number to reach here if they're calling an order in?
Well, you caught me off guard there. I'm brand new.
Oh, are you brand new?
Yes, sir.
Well, you can look it up under Cracker Barrel in Florence, Kentucky.
crackerbarrel.com.
crackerbarrel.com. Praise the Lord.
Absolutely.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
They're synonymous. They all mean the same thing. This is talking about the whole of God's Word. Open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law. Let's do this together. For a lot
I always
of people,
love
the
to
way
see the
that it
flag
helps them
when I
to
come home
memorize a
from
verse
the
is to go through it
Independence.
phrase by phrase. So
Beautiful
you say the
sight.
verse reference before
And
and
listening
after,
to
before phrase by
WIOK
phrase, and help you
107.5
remember. So let's do that
FM on the
together.
radio dial.
Psalm 119,
Tri-State Gospel
18.
out of
And let's say
Falmouth,
together,
Kentucky.
Open my eyes
Southern gospel music and some great ministers.
that I may see wonderful things in your law. Psalm 119, 18. Now let's take it away and see how you do. Let's just see, okay? Psalm 119, 18. Open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law. You got it. Give yourselves a hand.
The sixth way that God changes my life with His Word. This is a big one. It elevates my moods. It elevates my mood. And some of you really need a mood elevator right now. Because you're down in the dumps, and you're feeling a little grumpy, and you're feeling like nobody cares, and you're having a pity party of one and inviting yourself.
Speak for yourself there. I
Whenever
feel
you
pretty
get
good.
Discouraged. You don't need a coffee break.
McCollum
you need
Pike,
a word break.
McCollum
God
Road.
gave us the Bible to encourage us. It is a mood elevator. You say, how do you know that? Look at this next verse, Romans 15, verse 4. Everything that was written in the past, he's talking about the Bible, was written to teach us, so that through endurance and the encouragement of the Scriptures, we might have hope. Now I want you to circle 4 words in this verse. First, everything. Second, encouragement. Third, Scriptures.
Sounds like
And
Rick
fourth,
Warren.
hope.
Purpose-driven life.
Everything in the Scriptures is for our encouragement and hope. Everything? Yes. Everything that was written in Scriptures is meant to encourage you. It's meant for your encouragement. It is meant to be a mood elevator. Even the tough parts are there to ultimately encourage your life in the right direction. The next time you get discouraged, the next time you feel fatigued, you're run out of energy, you're just out of, pizzazz, why don't you come home
Little cottage.
and instead of turning on the television, try reading the Bible.
This is Pastor Rick's Daily Hope.
Ken County
We're so
Courthouse up
thankful
the
you've
end of the
chosen to
street.
spend some time
US
with
Bank.
us. Now, if you've missed any part of this broadcast, including portions we didn't have time for today, just go to PastorRick.com and listen online anytime. Rick will be back in just a moment to close out our time.
38 McCollum Pike. God's little nest. John and June. Travels with the Stephensons. 750-0000. Area code 859. Join us on YouTube, and Facebook under John Stephenson. John and June Guyman Stevens.
We were in the containment mode, and then unfortunately the virus overwhelmed where we got into extreme mitigation. We are building that public health capacity now to make sure that we stay in the containment mode for the upcoming fall and winter season, so we will not need to resort to the kind of mitigation that we had to this spring. I have confidence that our public health response of early case recognition that we've talked about, isolation and contact tracing, combined with our plans for increased surveillance, particularly for the most vulnerable, will be an effective public health strategy so our nation will be able to maintain itself in the containment mode. Again, that will be supported by the American public's continued cooperation, obviously in the areas of personal hygiene and the types of social distancing strategies that may be appropriate. The key to my comments, and the reason that I really wanted to stress them, was to appeal to the American public to embrace the flu vaccine with confidence. One of the greatest tools we have as we go through the fall, winter season that we're into, is to get the American public to embrace the influenza vaccine and thereby minimize the impact of flu to be the co-respiratory disease that we confront. Thank you very much.
Could I just follow up on that, Dr. Redfield, please? I don't know what to follow up. He was misquoted, totally misquoted. He said they could come together. They didn't talk about that. And his whole purpose in making the statement was to get a flu shot so that next fall we don't have such a big season of flu. And we possibly won't. But as you said, it's possible if the corona even comes back, and he doesn't know that it's going to, and neither do I. We spoke at great length. And I think the doctor will speak if you'd like to continue, but we may have some embers and we're going to put them out of corona. But we may have a big flu season. But that's different. Flu is very different from corona.
So a follow-up question?
Yeah, go ahead,
okay,
sure.
so Dr. Redfield, the Washington Post, which you did the interview with them, they quoted you as saying there's a possibility that the assault of the virus on our nation next winter will actually be even more difficult than the one we just went through. And when I've said this to others, they've kind of put their head back. They don't understand what I mean. We're going to have the flu epidemic and the coronavirus epidemic at the same time. Is that what you said to the Washington Post?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say to you just a minute ago, that the issue that I was talking about being more difficult, is that we're going to have two viruses circulating at the same time. This spring that we just went through, February, we had a benefit of having the flu season ended. So we could use all our flu surveillance systems to say, whoops, this is coronavirus, we need to focus. Next fall and winter, we're going to have two viruses circulating. And we're going to have to distinguish between which is flu and which is the coronavirus. And so the comment that I made, it's more difficult. Doesn't mean it's going to be more impossible. Doesn't mean it's going to be more, as some people have said, worse. It just means it's more difficult because we have to distinguish between the two. And what I was wanting to do, and what I want to do again here, is appeal to the American public to recognize they can really help like they did with mitigation, which they really helped. I need them to help now to best prepare us by getting the flu vaccine and taking flu out of the picture.
But that quote, excuse me, may not even have corona coming back, just so you understand.
No, but that quote that I just read was accurate, right? That's the quote from the Washington Post. You were accurately quoted, correct?
I'm accurately quoted in the Washington Post. As difficult. But the headline was empty.
What does the headline say?
Well,
Read the headline.
The headline says CDC director warns second wave of coronavirus is likely to be even more devastating. And isn't that
That's not what he said. That's not what he said.
But if you have the two things
The
happening,
headline doesn't cover.
No, I actually think it's actually going to be, I think the American public is going to heed the request to relook at their vaccine hesitancy to vaccine with confidence for flu. And I'm confident that the public health infrastructure that we're putting together now across this country so that we can early case diagnose, isolate, and contact trace, as I say, block and tackle, that system is going to be there, and we're going to be able to contain this virus.
Why did you retweet the article if it was inaccurate? Doctor, why did you retweet it?
You weren't called.
So we talked about this yesterday when you asked me this question, and someone I think used the word devastating, and I want to really again emphasize to the American public that when we first interacted with this virus for the first time in the February and March timeframe, we didn't have an understanding of its transmissibility, all of its symptoms. We do now. And I think what we are building together when we talk about the public health infrastructure, it is very much working on the surveillance piece. But I think we also know the strength of the American people and their ability to immediately understand how to protect themselves with not touching their face, making sure that they're washing their hands. But the other piece I wanted to talk about, and we mentioned yesterday also, that we have this summer, while we have flu surveillance that we can utilize and syndromic management that we can utilize, we have all of that time to prepare clearly the testing algorithm that you would need in a flu potentially if COVID came back. Potentially. And so we are preparing for that potential right now, and I think we spoke to you all about that and talked about how we're not only preparing for today and tomorrow, but we're preparing for 6 months from now, 3 months from now, and making sure that all of these pieces are in place. I think what Dr. Redfield clearly was asking for, just like we ask for every American to follow the guidelines, he's saying please add to that guidelines getting your flu shot and making sure you're protected.
There's a good chance that COVID will not come back.
We don't
and
know.
It comes back, it's in a very small confined area that we put out.
Well, the great thing is we'll be able to find it earlier this time. And I think that's what we're talking about. We'll find those cases earlier. So what Dr. Redfield said, we would be able to stay in containment phase. And what we're also hoping, and we talked about this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, that we're hoping that the flu infections also go down because people are much more aware of respiratory illnesses and how to protect themselves. We want you to get your vaccine, but we also want to also protect individuals from getting the flu because of the vulnerability we know in certain populations to flu and the devastating outcomes to flu. We could prevent and decrease both of those things. So I think we are assured that the CDC is putting in place today what we are going to need in the fall so that we can stay in containment if potentially the virus comes back.
And if it comes back, though, it won't be coming back in the form that it was. It will be coming back in smaller doses that we can contain. But what the doctor was saying, and I spoke to him at great length, he was saying if it should come back together, now you have a flu and you have the embers of corona. But in my opinion, from everything I've seen, it can never be like anything that we've witnessed right now. Would you say that?
Absolutely.
It's nothing like what we're talking about. What we've just gone through, we will not go through. You could have some embers of corona and you could have a big flu system. And if they combine, if they come together, it's not great, but we will not go through what we went through for the last 2 months.
President,
is that a correct statement?
I understand that the United States will certainly be more prepared in the fall, but how can you say that you know it won't come back in the same level that it has today?
What it is estimated, it might not come back at all, Jeff. It may not come back at all. He's talking about a worst case scenario where you have a big flu and you have some corona. And if it does come back, it's not going to come back, and I've spoken to 10 different people, not going to be like it was. Also, we have much better containment now. Before, nobody knew about it. Nobody knew anything about it. We understand it. Now, if we have pockets, a little pocket here, then we're going to have it put out. It goes out, and it's going to go out fast. We're going to be watching for it. But it's all possible. It's also possible it doesn't come back at all.
I understand the containment, but I don't understand how you know it won't come back on a big scale.
I didn't say it's not. I said if it does, it's not going to come back on anything near what we went through. But you could have a mess where they come at the same time. And if they come at the same time, the flu is not the greatest thing in the world, Jeff. It's not the greatest thing either. If they come at the same time, you have them both. But if we have embers of corona coupled with the flu, that's not going to be pleasant, but it's not going to be what we've gone through in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
If you don't think that it's going to come back at the same severity as it is right now, why are you still directing that taxpayer dollars to spend on emergency procurement of ventilators tens of
Because
thousands.
we have to have them for other reasons. Something else could come. I mean, we didn't know about Corona. Now we know about Corona. But look at what happened. And now we did have the H1N1 swine flu. We had that. We have other things that have happened. We had various forms of flu, but nothing like what we've had here. Nothing at all like what we've had here with the virus. But something could happen. I think that the stockpiles, we're making hundreds of thousands of ventilators right now. Nobody writes about that. You know, at the one time, all they talked about was ventilators, right? Because you didn't think it was possible for me to solve that problem. And I solved it, and nobody can believe it. I just spoke to world leaders today who desperately need ventilators. They said, the job you've done, and we're sending 500 to Mexico, then another 500 to France. We're sending some to Spain. We're sending some to Italy. We have them, they're being made by the thousands. And world leaders, I spoke to Prime Minister, I went through a lot of different calls today. I won't even tell you. But I can give you a list if you want. But I went through a lot of calls to a lot of leaders, spoke with Pakistan. They would like to have some ventilators. We're going to get them some ventilators. But they all said to me one thing. It was incredible that you solved the ventilator problem, because that was a big problem. The testing problem, we've done more than any other nation in the world. Go a step further. If you added up the testing of every nation in the world, put them together, we've done substantially more than that. You people aren't satisfied. So let's say we had 350 million people in the United States, right? Let's say. And if we gave every one of those people a test 10 times, so we gave 350 people a test 10 times, the fake news media would say, where's the 11th time? He didn't do his job. Trump didn't do his job. Because you have a lot of bad reporting out there. It's very sad. And it's so bad.
That's not true.
Well, you're one of the leaders of the bad reporting.
No, but it's not true.
Okay, let's get on to another subject. I wanted that to be cleared up. If you want, we can get onto it later, but I want the Vice President to speak. But you ought to get the news accurately. You ought to write it. If you take a look at what you wrote about the ventilators, and when we became the king of ventilators, we're making different factories all over, ventilators, by the thousands. In fact, Mike got back from Wisconsin. First thing he did, he called up. I said, how's it going? He said, you're not going to believe. He just saw a plant, a factory, where they're making ventilators. I think I can say the words were unbelievable. He said it was unbelievable when he saw the quality of the equipment, the professionalism, a tremendous number of, how many workers would you say were there?
Over 550. We doubled production and are about to triple production.
Nobody thought this could be done. The fake news was very unhappy that it was done. But you guys don't ask me about ventilators anymore.
Who's unhappy that ventilators?
Everybody. Because you never mention it. You never mention it. There's no stories. What a great job we've done with ventilators. We're now supplying ventilators all over the world because no other country could have done what we did. And you should say that's a great story. Instead, you say Trump was slow or slow. We were so fast. Plus, we put the ban on so much earlier. When Nancy Pelosi, as an example, you don't say this, when she's having her rally in San Francisco, in Chinatown, in San Francisco, nobody wants to say that. If we didn't, and Dr. Fauci said this, if we didn't close our country to China, we would have been so infected like nobody's ever seen. When you saw the chart, and we were at the top of the list in terms of success, nobody wrote it. I said, is anybody going to use that chart? Nobody wrote it. In terms of mortality, you saw that. Nobody wrote it. Germany and our country, the most successful in terms of mortality. Nobody wrote it. It would be great if you wrote the truth, but let's get on with it because I want Mike to speak and then we'll take some more questions on the assumption you'd like to, and I think you probably will. It's been encouraging to watch states begin to open up and it really has been. It's a beautiful thing to see as restrictions are lifted. We must maintain vigilance and continue practicing social distancing. I encourage governors to follow a careful, phased approach, and I want to remind all Americans to adhere to our guidelines, very important. The governors are going to adhere, hopefully, or they're going to do what they think is best. I want them to do what they think is best, but ideally they'll adhere. Wash your hands, avoid close physical contact as much as possible, and wear a face covering when distancing is impractical. There are cases we've flattened the curve and really made tremendous progress, but we must guard against a dangerous rebound. We don't want a rebound. That's so important. This is what we're just talking about. We don't want a rebound. The doctor doesn't want a rebound. These people definitely don't want a rebound. I don't think you want one, do you? Huh? You, especially. We don't want rebounds after all this death that we've suffered. Not work. I don't view work. I view it death that was unnecessary. Should have never happened. Should have never left that little area where it started. You know it, and I know it, and they know it. In our all-out war against the virus, we continue to make great strides on testing. Famous testing. Doing more than anybody else anywhere in the world. Nothing funny about that, John. Most of the governors have never faced a situation like this before, but we're helping them find unused testing capacity within their states. Tremendous testing capacity that the governors in many cases didn't know they had. And additional capabilities are coming online every day. We're coming up with new equipment like the Abbott Laboratories equipment. On-site, 5 minutes, great success. Everybody wants it. But you can only make so many of those machines, so we have many other forms of testing. We have many other machines that do it very quickly and by the millions, Our task force issued its reopening guidelines earlier than April 30th to give governors the time that they needed to develop testing capability and capacity and customize plans for their states, which many of them did. We've had some governors do a fantastic job on testing and on a lot of other things. I spoke, as you know, Governor Cuomo was here. We had a great conversation on testing yesterday, and they're doing a really good job in New York. We're working very closely with each of the states to help them succeed. I spoke earlier today with Governor Newsom, California, and that was all about testing, that conversation. He's been scaling up really well, really good job. And I agreed to help him get some of the critical supplies that California needs to make use of the tremendous capacity that they found. This is a tremendous testing capacity. And I'm going to do it very quickly. He needs certain things. We're going to get that to him very quickly. Now, could he get it himself? Yes, but I can get it faster. He understands that. And he's done a great job. And we're going to have it to him. We're going to have a lot of it to him over the next 2 days. And we're going to beef it up the following week, get him a lot of additional. He's done a really terrific job in California. Some of the governors have done a fantastic job working with us. I told the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, that I disagree strongly with his decision to open certain facilities which are in violation of the Phase 1 guidelines for the incredible people of Georgia. They're incredible people. I love those people. They're great. They've been strong, resolute, but at the same time, he must do what he thinks is right. I want him to do what he thinks is right. But I disagree with him on what he's doing, but I want to let the governors do. Now, if I see something totally egregious, totally out of line, I'll do. But I think spas and beauty salons and tattoo parlors and barbershops in Phase 1, we're going to have Phase 2 very soon, is just too soon. I think it's too soon. And I love the people. I love those people that use all of those things, the spas and the beauty parlors and barbershops, tattoo parlors. I love them. But they can wait a little bit longer, just a little bit, not much, because safety has to predominate. We have to have that. So I told the governor very simply that I disagree with his decision, but he has to do what he thinks is right. I'm excited to announce that in the coming weeks, the Air Force Thunderbirds are incredible, and the Navy Blue Angels, equally incredible, will be performing air shows over America's major cities and some of the cities that aren't major cities. They're going to be doing a lot of work, a lot of very dangerous flying. It's dangerous, you know, the odds when you start going at massive speeds and you're 18 inches away from each other. It's dangerous work. Your son is a great pilot, and I don't know if he can be. Could he be a Thunderbird? I don't know. I think he probably could, from what I hear. I don't know if I'd want him to be, because it's incredible what they're able to do and to sacrifice our front line. What we're doing is we're paying tribute to our front line healthcare workers confronting COVID, and it's really a signal to all Americans to remain vigilant during the outbreak. This is a tribute to them, to our warriors, because they're equal warriors to those incredible pilots and all of the fighters that we have for the more traditional fights. We win, and we win. When we want to win, we always win. Sometimes we don't want to win, so we just go to a standstill. But that's always, that's not the way this country works. Operation America Strong was the idea of our great military men and women, the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels crews who wanted to show support to the American medical workers who, just like military members in a time of war, are fiercely running forward to fight. It's going to be great. I want to see those shows. I've seen them many times, and I can't get enough of them. And on July 4th, we'll be doing what we had at the mall, as you know. We're going to be doing it. Last year was a tremendous success, and I would imagine we'll do it. Hopefully I can use the term forever. It was a great success, as you remember. Even though it was pouring, it was raining so hard. It was raining. It was about as hard as I've seen in a while, but it was an amazing success. Didn't bother the pilots, didn't bother the military, didn't bother the crews that we had there. So we're going to be doing that again on July 4th. Our great military is operating at 100% during this crisis, and thousands of troops are deployed alongside of civilians. And the COVID hotspots, as you know, you see them all over. When I spoke with Governor Cuomo, and when I spoke to Gavin Newsom and many of the other governors, they wanted to know if we could have some military help with the medical, and we gave it to them, and in every case they said fantastic. I mean, just fantastic. New York City, Mayor de Blasio called me to say it was inspiring to watch. He was there when the military came in. He said it gave everybody spirit when he saw the professionalism and the spirit that they had. They walked in and they helped a lot of people, doctors, nurses, respiratory technicians and professionals. It was an incredible thing. But everybody that saw them going to work said that was something special. So we're going to have some tremendous air shows all throughout our country. That's in honor of what we're all going through together and the people that are helping us so much. And unfortunately, the people who have passed away from something that should never have been allowed to happen. Following around-the-clock negotiations yesterday, the Senate answered my call to replenish the Paycheck Protection Program so that millions of additional American workers can keep getting a paycheck. We just increased it by $310 billion. I urged the House to pass the bill without delay. In our first round of funding, we provided nearly $350 billion, and it went at record speed to American workers and small businesses. And it's really been an incredible success. I want to thank the banks, with the big banks, the little banks, the commercial banks of all kinds. We had the community banks, were fantastic, by the way, community banks. And as you know, this was an interesting story. In recent days, I've called for Harvard, that's Harvard University, which has a $40 billion endowment fund to return the money that it was allocated under the CARES Act. And I'm pleased to announce that Harvard has announced today that they will not accept the funds, nor will Stanford University or many of the others that were involved, both on a university level, also on a company level. Some of the companies were bigger than people had represented or bigger than people had thought, and strong enough that they didn't need the money. So there's a certain amount of money that we are not sending. Well, as soon as I heard it, I said, stop funds. And for the most part, I guess they stopped it, Mike, right? They stopped it. But they're not accepting the money, and that's great. And so I want to thank Harvard. I want to thank Stanford. And I want to thank the other companies. In the case, it's broken differently between colleges and companies, but I want to thank the companies and the other great universities, and there's some great ones. The legislation passed by the Senate yesterday also reserves $30 billion in loans for small financial institutions that serve minority, and distressed communities are very important. We're determined to protect our African American, Hispanic American, and minority workers who have been hit so hard by this hidden enemy. My administration is pursuing a comprehensive strategy to address the full spectrum of needs in these communities, supporting both health and economic revitalization. First, my administration is committed to providing the testing that is needed to fight the virus in distressed communities. In the last month alone, we've already sent over $1.4 billion to our nation's 13,000 community healthcare centers. Think of that, 13,000. To increase testing and treatment in the underserved areas. We're also expanding access to telehealth.
Very nice there.
Telehealth has become a big deal. You know, I've been reading about it for years, and all of a sudden, because of this, it's become a big thing. People can't leave their houses. They didn't want to leave their houses for various reasons, including they wanted to follow the guidelines. The legislation passed by the Senate yesterday, and I want to thank everybody. A great vote. Great. It's, as you know, it was a unanimous vote. How often do you see that? But the legislation passed by the Senate yesterday includes an additional $25 billion to further expand testing and provides even more funding for community health centers and various forms of epidemics and pandemics. And we'll be working on that because, you know, as for a couple of your statements and questions before, we want to work on that for the future. We hope this doesn't happen again again ever, but last time was of this magnitude, 1917, that's a long time ago. So we want to be prepared, and we are prepared. And as I told you, we're building up hospital, not only our stockpile, which is being built up greatly, but also hospital stockpiles. We're getting them what they need. We're working out cost arrangements with them, and we're getting them a lot of the ventilators, which are the hardest thing for them to get, both from a cost standpoint and a technical standpoint. At the same time, we're also supporting the establishment of new testing sites focused on these communities. 40 sites have launched so far, and there are plans to launch dozens more in the next 3 weeks. We're coming up with testing apparatus and testing plans that are incredible when you look at the numbers. And some people are very, very big on testing. But some people are much less big than I am, I will tell you, and they're professionals. But we want to have it so that nobody can talk about, gee whiz, I wish we had more testing. Nobody's done it like we've done it, and nobody will. And we're getting very much stronger. We have incredible professionals, and so many different tests have now evolved. People are finding it even hard to believe. My administration is working closely with governors to ensure that they have the testing infrastructure in place to reduce further spread of the virus if they're so inclined to use the testing apparatus, including strategies for older individuals, low-income Americans, minorities, and Native Americans. As part of the effort, the White House task force, headed up by Mike, who's done incredible. I'll say it every time. I'll say it to anybody that wants to listen. Mike Pence has done an incredible job. Really an incredible job. Thank you. Is providing technical assistance to all 50 states through one-on-one phone calls as they develop and implement their plans. In addition, my administration is committed to restoring Black and Hispanic communities to full economic health. We want to be healthy economically and physically, and that's what we're doing. To that end, today I'm directing the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, led by Secretary Ben Carson, to focus its effort on supporting underserved communities impacted by the coronavirus. And so Ben Carson is working on that with Mike and myself and a lot of other people. I'm going to ask Tim Scott, who was so helpful with the opportunity zones. That's an economic answer to a lot of problems, and Tim Scott was fantastic. And so I'm going to ask him to get involved with you, and sure he'll be willing to do it from South Carolina. I also asked the council to identify what additional funding will be required from Congress beyond what has already been provided. We're really building ourselves a strong base, and we're building ourselves a wall that's very different from the kind of walls that you've been hearing me talking about. But it's nevertheless, in many ways, performs the same function. and hopefully it's going to perform it equally as well. Furthermore, the council will seek input from the private sector and community leaders on how we can best support minority and distressed communities. As president, I'm absolutely determined to deliver a great future for Americans of every race, religion, color, and creed. Before our nation was attacked by this horrible enemy, our African American and Hispanic American citizens were prospering like never before. Best employment numbers ever. Not only African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, every American. We were breaking records at every level. We had almost 160 million people employed. We were never even close to that number. And we were also breaking them economically, highest stock market numbers, highest numbers of every kind. And I think we're going to be back there, and I think it's going to be much sooner rather than later, and I think we'll surpass those numbers, including our employment numbers. But I'll not rest until that prosperity has been fully restored. And again, I really believe that we're going to lift those numbers higher than ever before, and it won't be as long as people might think. A lot of very smart people are looking at that and they're betting. You just have to look at what's going on with the stock market. In order to protect our great American workers, I've just signed an executive order temporarily suspending immigration into the United States. This will ensure that unemployed Americans of all backgrounds will be first in line for jobs as our economy reopens. Crucially, it will also preserve our healthcare resources for American patients. We have to take care of our patients. We have to take care of our great American workers. And that's what we're doing. So I've just signed it just before coming into the room. And very important, very important. And as to amending it or extending it, that we can do at the appropriate time. But it's now signed. Earlier today, the First Lady and I planted a tree on the south lawn of the White House in recognition of the 50th annual Earth Day. I was glad to announce that we will begin to reopen our national parks and public lands. We want Americans to be able to satisfy and be really safe. We want them to satisfy their family that safety is going to happen, and it will happen, and maybe even at a level like never before. We've learned so much. But we want them to enjoy these great national treasures as we continue to take reasonable precautions. And hopefully it'll be just reasonable. My administration has directed more than $7 billion in federal funding to support the development of treatments, diagnostics, and therapies. And that's something, doctors, I hope you can really work on. It's something so powerful and so important. The FDA, the NIH, and industry leaders are establishing master clinical trial protocols to test multiple promising new drugs at the same time, and we're doing a lot of testing right now. More than 1,600 locations across the country have signed up to administer convalescent plasma to patients, infusing them with antibodies of those who have recovered. And when they recover, I said it last time, practically the first thing they say is, I want to give my blood so that I can help other people. They want to give their blood. It's incredible. They're laying in bed. They're still in pretty weakened conditions, and they say, I want to give my blood, and that's happening all the time, isn't it? If you recovered from the coronavirus, I ask you to consider contacting your local blood or plasma donation center to arrange a donation that could potentially save